So A-Day is coming up Saturday, but who's really excited?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama, HSA Radio Network's Luke Robinson, that's me. Alabama internet legend Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We'll talk about FanDuel in just a bit. Thank you, everydayers, for being here every day. Thank you, newbies, for being here today. And thanks, everybody, for making this first listen every single day. Jimmy, we're going to go in a different direction here. We've been talking a lot of recruiting. We've been talking a lot of transfer portal, a lot of practice. But, Bama didn't practice on Wednesday. And we are on an interesting group text chain where some folks started talking about A-Day and about coming up this weekend and what the crowd should be like. And you brought up an interesting point. Like, it feels like not just Alabama's A-Day, but spring games in general don't have the same buzz. Now, is that because the most A-Days are now some kind of different hybrid of practice, trying to mix in a little fan fun? I don't know. It also could be, as a friend of ours pointed out, and we may not even be feeling the effects of this completely just yet, but because of the transfer portal, because of so many revolving doors out there for players, maybe some fans are beginning to lose touch with some of the players. Now, we've always rooted for Laundry, right? But that Laundry has always meant something to you and to me, and it still does. I mean, we do a podcast about every day. I could talk Alabama with anybody at any time. And you and I are excited about whatever A-Day is going to be. But I think you brought up a great point that the buzz doesn't seem to be there for it. And the more I thought about it, I don't know of anybody's A-Day or whatever G-Day, whatever you want to call it, that's generated a lot of buzz. And then our friend's point about, hey, it used to be we could watch people grow, and now it's just who can you rent for 6 months? I mean, again, we maybe even haven't felt all the effects yet, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think there is a general lack of appetite for spring games that kind of started with, some coaches and, Lane Kiffin, as he's kind of a trendsetter. Last year Ole Miss loudly didn't really do a spring game. They had a hot dog eating contest and a dunk contest and did some 7-on-7 flag football type stuff. I think that was kind of the start maybe. And now it's kind of caught, I don't know, momentum in terms of away from spring games. And what's amazing to me is, look at Alabama. We famously had the 97 spring game, right? It was famous. I mean, 2007, not 97. 2007, Saban's first A-Day. Alabama practically had a full stadium. It's 92,000, so short of an actual full stadium, but it sure seemed like it that day. And there was a spring game, and then boom, spring games took off. All of a sudden, people don't remember this, Luke. Prior to that, spring games weren't on TV, and that was before, by the way, the SEC network came along a little later, but there weren't spring games on TV. Alabama sort of started that with the Saban first spring game, and spring games became a thing. And then there was literal articles in big newspapers, Luke, about who had the biggest attendance at their spring game. Was it Alabama? Was it Ohio State? Was it Nebraska? And now, fast forward, maybe it's the portal, maybe it's NIL, maybe it's that teams are kind of shorthanded during the spring. Maybe Matt Rule is on to something a little bit about not wanting to show your players off on TV before the portal opens. Maybe that has a little to do with it. But the point is, gosh, that buzz created in 2007 by Alabama sort of is being extinguished, and it feels like by Alabama. That's not the truth, though. The truth is spring games all over the country are going away. It's not just Alabama. But I feel a little sad over it because Alabama sort of invented the high-profile, sold-out stadium spring game. And now my guess, Luke, and gosh, I hope I'm wrong, my guess Saturday is going to be less than 20,000. And Why? I think there's a bunch of reasons. Primarily the format, I think, primarily. But here's my worry, Luke, and it's really, I think, even more of a talking point is this. Spring games all over the country either aren't going to exist or they're going to be very lowly attended all over. But when Alabama has a low attendance Saturday, the take from some will be nobody cares because it's DeBoer, and the program sort of die. The interest in Alabama football is dying off due to DeBoer, and that's going to be the take, ignoring the fact that spring football is kind of dead all over the entire country. Ignoring that, and there'll be some sort of sole focus, just like Alabama was the sole focus spring attendance back in 07. So that's kind of a worry I have, is that it's going to be blamed on the transition from Saban to DeBoer and going 9-4 last year. That's just absolutely not true. But I think there will be some talk of that when attendance Saturday is 20,000 or less.
I'm with you. And look, we forget that in a way, Saban is the best ever. I mean, and you'll never hear me disparage him, but he walked into a pretty good situation in the sense that we were so incredibly hungry for a winner, and we knew we needed him, and we knew he'd be a winner, that we would do anything to help in any way that we could. And we were in such a malaise after the Shula era that we were like, okay, now we're about to start playing football again. Well, see, DeBoer is walking in post Saban, post all this greatness, and some of us, I'm one of them. I'm sure there are a lot of people who have listened. I've been to every national championship game that Saban was a part of. That's a lot of them. That's a lot of money. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And so I bet you some people are like, sort of somebody else's turn to get behind it. Even though that's not really the way I feel, I'll go to whatever championship DeBoer goes to too. But I get it. I get that we're sort of like, you were handed the keys to a Ferrari. Now, why aren't you doing like those two valets from Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Just riding all over the place and with your hair in the wind, even though he doesn't have a ton of hair, your ugly hooded shirt blowing in the wind. I don't know. I'm teasing. But yeah, I think that the enthusiasm for spring games is waning a little bit. I'm not sure that's necessarily an awful thing. I'm not sure it's a indicative of college football's ultimate demise. I don't think that's the case at all. I'm like you. I hadn't really thought about it, but also something else to think about. Now, this may not matter to some people. It doesn't matter to me. The Masters are this weekend. My daughter has a soccer game on Saturday and was supposed to have one on Sunday. And the coach already talked to me, was like, hey, we got to move that Sunday game. I'm like, why? He said, because of the Masters. And it doesn't bother me, but it will bother some people, and it'll probably keep some people from going to the spring game.
Well, I don't miss Sunday Masters, and I hate missing Saturday Masters, to be honest. I wish A-Day wasn't on Masters weekend, because I would like to watch the Masters, but I'm going to choose Alabama football, even going to practice, over the Masters every time myself. I get it for those of my friends and others that I know that, no, I'm going to watch the Masters before I watch Alabama practice football. I get that take. I disagree myself, but I get that take. But yeah, I mean, I take the Masters extremely seriously as a sports fan, but also a golf fan.
Time to talk a little FanDuel. Y'all know I love FanDuel. They've been a sponsor for a long time, and we appreciate them so much. The NBA playoffs they're practically here. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you get $250 in bonus bets. If that bet is $250, that's a lot. I love how FanDuel is easy, whether it's picking or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com to claim that $250 in bonus bets today, right after this podcast. Jimmy, just FYI, we had any internet things going on here? I had one little squiggly for a minute. I just want to be sure we're good.
We're good on my end. There was a couple of pauses, but they were very brief.
Okay. All right.
So I think to me it was more of a hiccup. I hope people listening understand, and we'll breeze past a hiccup.
Yes, we will. If all we've got is hiccups, we usually have dry heaves, so we're pretty good.
Hiccups are good for us.
Jimmy, you also texted me, and since we're sort of going, more philosophical today, you wanted to talk about CFB and the national championship, college football playoff championships, and what Ohio State did last year and what it feels like this year. And the floor is yours, Senator.
I'm going to talk for 25 hours. I probably could, frankly. And boy, talk about losing attendance. I think, look, last year it just kind of dawned on me out of the blue. I was listening to another show, and this is not what the host was talking about, but it dawned on me while listening to this diatribe. I'm like, last year at this time, Ohio State was sort of a runaway pick to win the national championship, and they did, because it really felt like they pushed all their chips to the table, right? I mean, they went all in. They spent a ton of money, not just on the portal, but on retaining their roster. They had a lot of juniors that could go pro. They talked a lot of them into staying. Then they go heavy in the portal and get a Caleb Downs and others. They got a big freshman class coming in, headlined by Jeremiah Smith. And not only did they do all that, Luke, they went and hired at tremendous expense UCLA's head football coach to be the offensive coordinator. I mean, they really went all in. They were sick of losing to Michigan, and they sick of watching Michigan win a national championship. And they're just like, the heck with this. We're going to spend all it takes. And they did. And hey, let's give them some credit. Just because you're a huge spender doesn't mean you're necessarily going to win it all. Go ask the New York Yankees. They spend a ton every year, and they do win a lot, but they don't lift the World Series trophy every year, or hardly. But give Ohio State credit for coming through. But the reason I bring all that up is this year I don't see that team. I don't see a team that went all in. I mean, everyone's trying to win. I'm not saying no one's trying to win. I'm just saying I don't see any team that went like Ohio State did a year ago and said, no holds barred. We'll hire whatever coordinator we can get that makes headlines, and we'll own the portal. We'll sign every 5-star. I think Texas is sort of close to that, but Texas didn't really do what Ohio State did. There's no massive staff changes. As a matter of fact, their running back coach left. I mean, there's no massive staff changes. They lost a lot of guys to the draft, a couple that could have come back, like an Isaiah Bond, so but they're going to be the favorite. And this is why they're the favorite, not like for why Ohio State did. Quarterback is why they're the favorite. Ohio State lost their starting quarterback. Will Howard's gone. Oregon lost Dylan Gabriel. Alabama lost Jalen Milroe. Georgia lost Carson Beck. Texas isn't returning a quarterback, but Texas is the team perceived as improving at quarterback. Yeah, they lost their quarterback, but they're going to be even better with Manning. So that's why they're going to be preseason number one. And I think most people's pick to win the national championship, but they're not doing it like Ohio State did last year. I think it's back-to-back Final Fours, and now Manning's at quarterback. That's why they're going to be number one. They're not doing it exactly like Ohio State did, and there's not a all-in thing. I think Texas is just continuing to be Final Four good and have now improved at quarterback most likely. So my point is to this, Luke, is that, and it affects Alabama, because I think Alabama is a national championship contender. I believe that. It's wide open. It's wide open. Who looks unbeatable? I see a bunch of teams that look good to me. Alabama, Penn State, watch for Clemson. Texas will be really good. Georgia will be really good. I think, there'll be sleepers. There always is. But Penn State in particular, I think Michigan, even with the freshman quarterback, is going to be a thing again. I think it's more wide open. Maybe it's NIL. Maybe it's the portal. But this feels wide open to me. When Alabama was dominating college football, it didn't feel wide open. Alabama was preseason number one almost every year, If not, they will be preseason number one the next year. And for a while, Alabama had challengers. At one point, it was Clemson. At one point, it was LSU. At one point, it was Georgia. Those teams all kind of came. Georgia was really dominant for a while. I bet no one picks Georgia to win the national championship this year. Almost no one. They'll be good. There's no doubt they'll be good. But I bet no credible organization says Georgia's going to win it all this year. They'll be a contender. I just see it as wide open. And maybe that's fun. Maybe that's great for the fans. It might be helpful towards an Alabama. And I think, Luke, I'll go ahead and say right now, this could prove very, very wrong, but I'll say that the winner of the national championship game this year is probably a 2-loss type team.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt.
That just gets hot. The hottest team going into the playoff will win the playoff, but it might be a team that lost 2 games along the way to get there.
Well, Ohio State did last year.
Well, that's a great point. Yeah. No, that's true.
And I mean, now that there's so many more games, it certainly makes sense. I think you're right about. I haven't seen anybody pick Georgia. I've seen Alabama pick to win the national championship, and what's weird to me is I think Alabama's schedule is pretty good bit tougher than Georgia's. Now, Georgia may have some more question marks, even though we know how much talent they have. I think you're right about it being pretty wide open. When it's still kind of weird to think when you talk about Texas, that's an SEC school. So that's an SEC spot. I mean, there's not going to be, what I'm saying is if Texas is really good, then it's going to be kind of difficult to have LSU and Bama and Georgia and whoever else, Ole Miss, all still Tennessee, all still there, very good too. Some people like Florida to make the playoffs. Anyway, it's going to be an up for grab year. I love having a villain. I mean, Star Wars is better because of Darth Vader.
Right.
I think you need a villain. If it's always up for grabs, by everybody. Yeah, I think there's some initial excitement, but what it also means is you have a lot of, like in the NFL, you have a lot of 9-8 teams, and I don't want a 9-8 team winning the national championship. I know it's different, but I'm just saying.
No, I agree. That's one of the things I love the NFL, but you're right about that. One of the things that sort of stinks about the NFL is it's reasonable that a 9-8 team could win the Super Bowl, and that's not what everybody wants to see at the end. People want to see the 2 teams that went 15-2.
Well, think about it this year. Think about turn it over to basketball. 4 number 1 seeds make it, and I think they're clearly the 4 best teams in college basketball. And the ratings were awesome. The games were really good. Yeah, the Houston game could have ended a little differently, and I mean it was a little. Yes, it was climactic in a sense, but also kind of a weird way to end. I mean, sort of like a Chris Webber timeout kind of thing. I mean, you don't want to see a game end like that. But the game itself was, intense and fun. And so were the other 2 Final Four games because you had good teams playing. I want to see the best teams playing. I go back to last year with Indiana. I guess we had to include them in the playoffs, but by God, they weren't good enough.
Yeah, there'll be a couple of, I think one team to watch is Illinois. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be considered so much a Cinderella because they had a pretty good year last year, and they do have a fairly high profile quarterback, but Illinois' schedule sets up for them to be this year's Indiana. And another team that I saw their schedule was like shockingly easy, and I think a pretty decent team, but Georgia Tech. I mean, I'm not sure that's a team you want to put in the playoff. They play Notre Dame and Georgia, and 10 games they will be favored to win, I believe.
Clemson.
No, I don't think they play Clemson. I mean, until the ACC title game.
Right.
And obviously, maybe that's what knocks them out. But, and who knows? Maybe they get blown out by Notre Dame and Georgia, and then if they do make the ACC title game, lose to Clemson. I'm just saying, it's teams like that. Josh Pate makes a good point about this. It's like, you used to just ask, okay, who are the best teams? Now you almost have to look at the schedule before you look at the teams.
There's no doubt.
The schedule is sort of dictating who can have a really good year, as opposed to who's a great team or not. And I just know that Georgia Tech's schedule stood out to me as like, and I think ACC and Big 12 teams, period. Heck, I've been saying this, maybe it's to build up my own excitement in it. I think the winner of Iowa State, Kansas State in week 0 may win the Big 12. And then boom, you're in the playoff. That could be sort of playing for a playoff spot in a way, and you're in week 0, which is super exciting, I think, for fans. A real wide open year, and maybe Alabama needs that. Just think of this: Alabama almost made the playoff, maybe should have made the playoff at 9-3. Maybe Alabama's in the same position this year, Luke, where you're 9-3, getting in the last spot. That doesn't mean that you can't win the playoff, especially in a year like this.
All right. A couple of odd and end things here to wrap up. First of all, Caleb Odom had some interesting comments at an Ole Miss press conference thing. He was like, I feel more loved, more welcomed here, I think. I just thought that was odd. I mean, I don't know that anybody didn't welcome or like Caleb Odom. But then Goat Leah, or is it Goat Lacia? Did we decide?
It's a Goat Tia.
Goat Tia. All right.
It's Goat Tia, meaning
okay.
she's the greatest, and
her name is Tia. Gotcha. Okay. Sorry, Goat Tia. I'm sorry. But she is a good follow on Twitter. And she actually tweeted something about what Caleb Odom said. And Caleb Odom responded to her. He was like, no, nothing but love for Alabama, which is just weird. It's almost like players and coaches, whoever, can say whatever they want to. And then if somebody goes, they can say, man, I really hated my time there. They treated me like crap and I couldn't wait to get out. And thank God I'm at this other place now. And then somebody goes, oh my God, you didn't have a good time here? And he goes, no, nothing but love.
Yeah.
I'd be like, wait a minute.
It's a little bit like saying no offense to someone before you offend them.
Before you offend the crap out of them.
Because you think it's like a get out of jail free card. Hey, what I'm about to say is going to offend the hell out of you or anyone else. But by prefacing it with no offense, you're not allowed to take any.
Or when you tell somebody, I think you're super smart, but boy, that was stupid. Whatever. I mean, I just thought that was a little bit bizarre.
Probably a good example of that. Fairly smart guy. I say stupid things all the time.
Yeah, look, I mean, we both got college degrees from the University of Alabama, but now you talk about falling out of a well. I don't think Alabama's bragging to anybody that they gave me a degree. Okay, so Derek Zammit. I'm Derek Zammit.
He loves saying that.
I just love it.
Well, I think we ought to kind of get it out of the way.
Somebody doesn't do a Photoshop of Derek Zammit, like transformed into Gumby. But I think, he's going to commit very soon. And
possibly.
So that could be something to keep an eye on.
He's my favorite quarterback in the 26 class. In terms of guys Alabama could realistically end up with, I'm pretty high on him. I've got this great comp I worked on. One of the things, sometimes I work on these comps. I know it might sound crazy, like, you really do that? I'm like, yeah, I really do that. Now, I study it because I'm trying to find a really good comp. And in the past, I've been really stuck on Alabama, like comparing Alabama prospects to former Alabama players. And I should probably stick with that. But it's so much easier when you compare them to the world of players, because there's so many more to choose from that sort of line up. And I think I'm pretty proud of the one I came up with yesterday. I feel like this is very, very accurate. And I'm talking about at the time of recruitment. Derek Zammit reminds me a lot of Sam Levitt, who's out at Arizona State right now. They're not and pretty spooky. If you look at style of play, starts with that pocket passer, but pretty athletic for a pocket passer. Both check, both virtually identical 6'1", 195-ish, 6'1", 195-ish as juniors in high school. Both, check. Where they're ranked. Derek Zammit's going to end the cycle. In my opinion, Derek Zammit's going to end up somewhere around the 18th or 20th best quarterback in the country. I think that's where he'll end up, 18th or 20th, right about where Sam Levitt was when he came out. I'm just telling you, they're just really similar. Now, does that mean Zammit's going to have the same career? Levitt got his team to the semifinals as a redshirt freshman. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, if you want to know what kind of player he is, what it's going to look like, I think Derek Zammit is a lot like Sam Levitt.
Y'all know how I feel about Sam Levitt because he's at Arizona State, where my son is a student right now. I actually went to the Arizona State-Texas game in the Georgia Dome. It was a ton of fun.
Levitt almost pulled it off.
Texas got away with one right there, if you ask me. But regardless, I would love a Sam Levitt. Hey, if Sam Levitt were in the good question. I mean, good hypothetical. If Sam Levitt were in the transfer portal and wanted to come to Alabama, what would you want?
It would be hard to turn away someone I consider one of the country's best proven starting quarterbacks. I'm just higher on Ty Simpson than most, and I admit that I might be higher on him than logic suggests, but I am, and I'm just so content with Ty. I wouldn't be too interested except for a small list of guys, but I do think that most would choose Sam Levitt. And probably most coaches would choose him because he is a proven player and he played in the playoffs. I think Sam Levitt's a heck of a player. I just think Ty Simpson's also going to prove that he's a heck of a player. And if Ty was the starting quarterback at Arizona State last year, you might have seen something similar.
All right. That's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.